But what if I told you that one version of the 1964 Lincoln cent with a tiny D mint mark has shocked collectors, stunned grading experts, and in elite condition has reached reported market levels as high as $844,000? What if the smallest coin in your pocket carried the biggest secret in American numismatics, because in 1964, something unusual happened at the Denver Mint? And most people still have no idea. Let's rewind. The year was 1964. America was changing fast. Silver was vanishing from circulation. The government was striking coins at a feverish pace to combat shortages. The Denver Mint alone produced over 3 billion Lincoln cents that year. 3 billion. That sounds like the opposite of rare, doesn't it? Exactly, and that's where the story turns. When production numbers explode, quality control bends. Dies wear out. Pressures increase. Mistakes slip through. And in the chaos, hidden anomalies are born. The 1964 D Lincoln cent was struck in massive quantities. Most are worth exactly 1 cent. But scattered among them are coins that defy expectations, coins that shouldn't exist in the form they do, and when they surface, collectors don't just notice, they compete first. Let's talk about condition. You've heard the phrase mint state. But do you understand what it means at the highest level? A coin graded MS67 red or above is not just uncirculated. It's nearly flawless. Full original luster. No contact marks. Vibrant copper surfaces glowing like they were struck yesterday. Now think about this, billions were made. Almost all went straight into circulation. Thrown into pockets. Fed into vending machines. Dropped on concrete. Tossed into drawers. How many survived untouched? Very few, and among those survivors, how many meet the microscopic scrutiny of today's grading standards? Fewer still. That's why elite condition 1964 D cents have shocked the market. When an example emerges with blazing red surfaces and razor-sharp strike quality, collectors fight. Registry set builders, serious, deep-pocketed collectors, compete for the finest known specimen, and that's where the numbers escalate. Reported sales of top-tier examples have reached extraordinary heights, including figures approaching $844,000 in elite registry battles and high-end private transactions tied to conditional rarity. Not because the coin is rare in mintage, but because it is rare in perfection. That's a powerful lesson. Rarity isn't always about how many were made. It's about how many survived perfectly. But condition isn't the only secret hiding in the 1964 D. Now we move deeper, because this is where things get interesting. During that frantic year of production, die varieties began appearing, subtle differences created when dies were engraved, hubbed, or polished. Some show repunched mint marks. Others reveal doubling in the lettering. Certain specimens display die cracks, die chips, or cuts that transform a simple penny into a cataloged variety. To the untrained eye, they look identical. To a specialist, they are treasure maps. Take repunched mint marks, for example. Before mint marks were part of the master die, they were punched by hand into working dies. That means slight misalignments could occur. A second impression over the first. A faint shadow of a D slightly north, south, east, or west of the primary mint mark, tiny detail. Massive difference. Collectors hunt these. Why? Because they represent a moment of human error in an industrial system, and human error creates scarcity. Then there are double dies. Not machine doubling, the flat, shelf-like distortion that adds little value. But true hub doubling, where design elements appear distinctly doubled due to misalignment during die creation, strong doubling on liberty. On in God we trust. On the date itself, when verified and graded, these coins can command prices far beyond face value, sometimes thousands, sometimes tens of thousands depending on strength, demand, and grade. And now let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked closely at the word liberty on a penny? When was the last time you tilted a 1964 D cent under a light and examined the mint mark? Exactly. And that's why opportunities still exist, because millions of Americans overlook what specialists search for daily. But we're not done yet. There's another twist: color designation. Copper coins are graded not just on numerical condition, but on color: brown, or red. That bright original red copper is fleeting. Over time, exposure to air turns copper brown. So finding a 1964 D cent that remains fully red after 60 years, that's uncommon. Finding one graded at the highest levels with full red designation, that's elite, and elite coins create elite competition. Imagine this scenario. Point 2: collectors are building top-ranked Lincoln cent registry sets. They already own superb coins. But one slot remains, the 1964D in the highest certified grade available. Population reports show only a handful at that level. Perhaps none finer. When that coin appears at auction, it isn't just a penny. It's a trophy. Bidding escalates. 5 figures become 6. Headlines follow. The numismatic community takes notice, and suddenly, the world is reminded that even the most common coin can become extraordinary under the right circumstances. But here's the part that should really get your attention: most of these coins were pulled from circulation decades ago by ordinary people. Bank tellers, hobbyists, sharp-eyed collectors checking rolls, and not hedge fund managers, not insiders, just observant individuals who understood that history hides in plain sight. So what should you be looking for? Start with luster. Does the coin still shine with cartwheel brilliance under light? Check the mint mark. Is there any sign of doubling or unusual positioning? Inspect the lettering. Do you see separation lines or strong doubling on keywords? Examine the surfaces. Any dramatic die cracks or retained cuds, and most importantly, condition. Are there distracting marks? Or does the coin look shockingly pristine for its age? Because sometimes, the value isn't in a dramatic error, sometimes, the value is in surviving untouched while billions didn't. And now let's step back. Why does this matter? Because we live in a time when people are searching for financial opportunity. Side hustles, investments, tangible assets. Something real they can hold. Rare coins check all those boxes. They are finite, historical, portable, private. And when the right coin meets the right collector at the right moment, the result can be life-changing. Is every 1964D penny worth a fortune? No, but is it possible that one extraordinary example, hidden in a jar, tucked in a roll, sitting in a forgotten album, could command astonishing money? History says yes, and that possibility is powerful. Think about it. The next time you receive change, will you glance at it, or truly look at it? Will you see a penny, or potential? Because buried in the billions minted during that frantic year in Denver are coins that defy their humble origins, coins that have stunned auction rooms, coins that have climbed towards six-figure and even headline-grabbing valuations under extraordinary circumstances, coins that remind us that value is often invisible until knowledge reveals it. So tonight, open the jar, pull out those old rolls. Look for 1964. Look for the small d. Hold it under a light, and ask yourself one simple question: what if the most overlooked coin in America is waiting quietly in your home? What if the difference between 1 cent and a staggering windfall is nothing more than awareness? Because sometimes, wealth doesn't arrive with flashing lights, sometimes, it's copper, small, one assuming, and one discovery away from changing everything. What if I told you that a penny you've walked past your entire life could be worth more than a house, more than a retirement fund, even more than a lifetime of work? Not a gold coin, not an ancient relic. A penny, 0.1 cent, dated 1960. With a tiny D beneath Lincoln's shoulder. This is the 1960D Lincoln cent. And buried inside this ordinary-looking coin is one of the most controversial, suspense-filled stories in modern American numismatics, a story of hidden errors, whispered discoveries, and values so shocking they've stunned seasoned collectors. Some examples have been linked to reported sales approaching $844,000. Others are rumored, quietly, nervously, to cross into 7 figures under the right circumstances, and the most unsettling part, millions of Americans may already own one, and have no idea. Act 1 begins with a mistake. A very small one. In 1960, the U.S. Mint was under pressure. The economy was changing. Demand for coins was exploding. Denver was striking Lincoln cents by the hundreds of millions. Speed mattered. Perfection didn't always win, and when speed meets steel dies in human hands, errors are born. At first glance, the 1960D cent looks boring. Brown copper. Lincoln's calm profile. The familiar wheat to memorial transition era. Nothing flashy. Nothing obvious, but lean in closer. Look at the date, look at the mint mark, look at the letters in Liberty. Because this is where the story starts to turn. Collectors began noticing strange anomalies, tiny shifts, distortions, doubling so subtle it felt almost imagined. Was the date thicker than usual? Were the numbers spaced oddly? Was the D-mint mark repunched, or even doubled? Then came the first shock. A handful of 1960D cents surfaced with dramatic doubled dies, doubling so bold it could be seen without magnification. Not machine doubling. Not wear. True hub doubling, frozen into the coin forever at the moment of creation, the kind of error that turns pocket change into generational wealth. But that was only the beginning. because as more eyes examined these coins, something far more explosive emerged, a controversy that still divides experts today: the date, specifically, the shape of the 0 and the 6. In Philadelphia, the 1960 Lincoln cent famously exists in both large date and small date varieties. The small date is scarcer, sharper, and far more valuable. At Denver, officially, was only supposed to strike the large date. Officially, then whispers began. Collectors claimed to see 1960 D cents with date characteristics that didn't match the large date at all. Narrow or numerals. A higher, sharper 0. A date that looked wrong. Or right, depending on how you look at it. Could a small date 1960 D exist? If it did, it would rewrite price guides overnight, and if it were ever universally authenticated, the value wouldn't just climb, it would detonate. This is where Act 2 tightens the grip, because while the debate raged, something else happened. Coins started selling. Quietly at first. Then loudly. High-grade 1960 D error cents, especially those with dramatic doubling, pristine surfaces, and razor-sharp strikes, began commanding staggering prices: 0.5 figures, 0.6 figures. Then came the sale that made headlines ripple through the coin world. A top condition 1960 D Lincoln cent, loaded with extraordinary error characteristics and certified at an elite level, reportedly reached a price as high as $844,000. Let that sink in. From a coin once worth 1 cent to nearly $1 million, and that wasn't even the end of the story, because some specialists believe that if a confirmed, universally accepted 1960 D small date or a unique transitional or mule error were to surface in flawless condition, the ceiling wouldn't be $800,000, it could be $1 million or more. Why? Because rarity isn't just about how many coins exist, it's about how many people want them, and how desperately, and collectors don't just want the 1960 D cent, they want the impossible version of it, the one the mint says shouldn't exist, the one history tried to bury, the one hiding in plain sight. Ask yourself this: how many 1960 D pennies have been spent at gas stations, dropped in parking lots, thrown into jars, drawers, and coffee cans? How many were never checked, never magnified, never questioned? That's the danger and the thrill. Because the next great discovery doesn't come from a museum, it comes from someone curious enough to look twice. Now the tension peaks, because not all 1960 D treasures scream for attention. Some whisper repunched mint marks where the D shows clear separation lines, doubled dies so crisp the lettering looks like it's vibrating, die cracks, cuds, and clash marks that prove the coin was born during chaos at the mint, coins that survived untouched for decades, waiting. And here's the twist most people miss: condition matters more than ever. A common 1960 D cent in average shape? Worth a cent, but the same coin, struck sharply, blazing red, graded at the top of the scale. Now you're playing a different game, because top population coins don't just sell, they compete. 2 wealthy collectors. 1 coin. No second chance. Prices don't rise logically in that arena, they explode emotionally. This is why reported sales can leap from thousands to hundreds of thousands seemingly overnight, and why the next record could already exist, unnoticed, unloved, forgotten. Which brings us to Act 3, the moment everything comes together. Imagine this: you're sorting through old change. Maybe a jar from your parents' house. Maybe a roll from the bank. Maybe a box that hasn't been opened since the 1980s. You see Lincoln's face, you see the date point 1960. Then your eyes drop. There's the D. Do you keep going, or do you stop and look closer? Because history favors the curious, and wealth favors the prepared. The 1960 D Lincoln cent isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that the greatest opportunities don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they sit quietly, disguised as nothing special, waiting for someone bold enough to question the ordinary. That penny in your hand could be exactly what you think it is. Or it could be the reason your life changes. 1 cent, 1 glance. 1 decision to look closer. So before you dismiss your spare change, before you spend another penny without thinking, ask yourself one final question. What if the rarest coin you'll ever own is already yours, because the next unbelievable discovery doesn't belong to the past? It belongs to whoever checks next. What if I told you that a single penny, one small, copper coin that might be hiding in a dusty jar or wedged between your car seats, could be worth far more than 1 cent? Not $1, not $100, but thousands, and in rare cases, life-changing money tied to Lincoln cents that most people overlook. And now before you roll your eyes and think, it's just another penny, let me stop you right there. Because the 1962 D Lincoln cent has quietly built a reputation among collectors. It's common enough to ignore, yet mysterious enough to reward those who truly understand what to look for. And here's the twist most people never hear. It's not the date alone that matters. It's the hidden details, the subtle flaws, the tiny mint mark. The microscopic differences that separate an ordinary penny from one that can command shocking prices at auction. Let's go back to 1962. The Denver Mint struck over 1.7 billion Lincoln cents that year. Think about that number. Nearly 2 billion. On the surface, that makes the 1962 D cent sound utterly worthless, and in most cases, it is. In circulated condition, a typical 1962 D penny is worth exactly what you think it's worth, 1 cent. Maybe 2 or 3 cents for its copper content. So why are we even talking about it? Because buried within those billions are coins that defy the odds, coins with exceptional preservation, coins with dramatic mint errors, coins so pristine that collectors have fought fiercely to own them, and when collectors fight, prices explode. Let's talk condition first. In the coin world, condition is king. A 1962 D cent that's been rattling around in pockets for decades is common. But one that somehow survived untouched, full blazing red luster, razor-sharp strike, no blemishes, now that's rare. In fact, at the highest certified grades, such as MS67 Plus Red, 1962 D cents have sold for thousands of dollars. That's not hype. That's documented auction history. Why? Because while billions were made, very few were preserved perfectly. Most were spent. Most were scratched. Most were mishandled. Perfection is rare and rarity drives value. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The 1962 D Lincoln cent sits right at the edge of a transitional era in U.S. coinage. Just a few years later, in 1965, the U.S. Mint would remove silver from circulating coins due to rising metal prices. The early 1960s were a time of massive production pressure. When mints rush, mistakes happen, and that brings us to the real treasure hunt: errors. Off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, die cracks, cuds, clipped planchets, broad strikes. To the average person, these look like damaged coins. To a trained eye, they're opportunities. Take a dramatic off-center 1962 D cent, where the design is shifted significantly but the date and mint mark remain visible. Those have sold for hundreds of dollars depending on severity. Or consider major die breaks, where chunks of the die cracked away, leaving raised blobs of metal on the coin's surface. These so-called cuds can transform a 1-cent coin into a highly collectible piece. Then there are doubled dies. While the 1962 D is not famous for a major doubled die like the legendary 1955, minor hub doubling and machine doubling varieties exist. And when combined with pristine condition, that's when serious collectors start paying attention. But here's the psychological twist: most people never look closely enough. They assume old equals valuable, they assume rare dates are the only ones worth checking, and they miss the truth hiding in plain sight. Sometimes the value isn't in age or rarity alone, it's in survival and uniqueness. Now let's address the elephant in the room. You may have heard rumors online. Claims that a 1962 D penny sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even whispers of values climbing toward $1 million. Here's what you need to know. As of verified auction records, there is no confirmed sale of a standard 1962 D Lincoln cent reaching $844,000 or anywhere near $1 million. Those jaw-dropping prices belong to other legendary Lincoln cents, like the 1943 bronze cent or the 1958 double die obverse. But don't click away, because dismissing the 1962 D would be a mistake. While it hasn't reached those headline-grabbing numbers, high-grade examples have crossed the auction block for thousands. And that's not pocket change. Imagine finding a coin worth $30,000 in a roll you bought for 50 cents. Imagine discovering an error coin that collectors compete for. It happens, not every day, but often enough to keep the hunt alive, and that's the real story. The 1962 D cent represents possibility. It represents the idea that something ordinary can become extraordinary under the right conditions. Think about the math. Out of nearly 2 billion coins, only a microscopic fraction achieve top population grades. Fewer still feature dramatic, desirable errors. The survival rate of perfection is tiny, which means if you find one, you're holding something statistically remarkable. So how do you know if yours is special? First, look at color. Collectors pay premiums for red cents, coins that retain their original fiery copper sheen. Brown coins, even in nice condition, rarely bring big money. Second, examine the surfaces. Are there scratches? Dings? Spots? Or does it look untouched? Third, inspect for errors. Use magnification. Look for off-center strikes. Look for raised cracks. Look for unusual thickness or clipped edges. Check the mint mark. Does it look normal? Any signs of repunching, and here's the critical step most people skip: get it graded. Professional grading by PCGS or NGC authenticates the coin and assigns it a condition score. That score can mean the difference between $10 and $3,000. But now pause for a second. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? How many did you actually examine? Probably none. That's the pattern. Interrupt the shift in awareness, because treasure hunters don't find treasure by accident. They find it by paying attention when others don't. The 1962 D Lincoln cent may not be the rarest coin in America. It may not headline six-figure auction catalogs, but it sits quietly in circulation history as a sleeper, a coin so common that pristine survivors become extraordinary. And here's the bigger truth. The dream of finding wealth in your pocket isn't foolish. It's happened before. A teenager finds a rare double die and change. A retiree discovers a valuable error coin in a roll from the bank. An estate sale reveals untouched rolls from the early 60s, blazing red and nearly perfect. These stories aren't myths. They're documented, and every one of them started with someone deciding to look. So tonight, before you toss the jar of pennies back on the shelf, before you assume nothing valuable could possibly be hiding there, ask yourself one question: what if? What if one of those copper coins has survived 6 decades in near perfect condition? What if there's a dramatic mint error waiting to be discovered? What if the ordinary penny you've ignored for years is the one coin collectors are still searching for? The 1962 D Lincoln cent is a reminder that opportunity doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it hides in plain sight, and sometimes it waits for the person curious enough to notice. So grab a magnifying glass, pull out those rolls, look closer than you ever have before. Because wealth doesn't always come wrapped in gold bars or lottery tickets. Sometimes it's copper, and it might already be in your hands. What if I told you that a penny you've probably seen 1,000 times could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of wages, maybe even enough to change everything overnight? Not a gold coin, not an ancient relic. A single, ordinary-looking Lincoln cent dated 1961. Stamped with a tiny D. Most people would spend it without a second thought. But a handful of collectors know a different story. A story filled with hidden mistakes, minting chaos, and jaw-dropping prices that have reached as high as $844,000 in top condition. And in the most extreme, whispered corners of the hobby, values that push into the millions. This is the story of the 1961 D Lincoln cent. And once you hear it, you'll never look at your change the same way again. Act 1 begins with a simple truth that almost no one talks about. 1961 was supposed to be boring. The Lincoln cent had been around for decades. No dramatic redesign. No precious metals. Just copper, machines, and speed. The Denver Mint was striking hundreds of millions of cents, day after day, pushing production to the limit. Efficiency mattered more than perfection, and that's exactly when history slips, because when mints rush, mistakes don't just happen, they multiply. Somewhere on the Denver Mint floor in 1961, dies were punched, repunched, adjusted, and reused. Mint marks were hand-punched back then. One blow. Sometimes two. Sometimes more. If the first strike was weak or misaligned, the engraver simply tried again, and that's where the trouble began. Tiny shifts. Slight rotations. Doubling so subtle that the naked eye would miss it. Until one day, decades later, someone put a 1961 D cent under magnification, and their heart skipped a beat. Was that a second D? Was Lincoln's date doubled? Were those letters shadowed? Yes. And no. And sometimes, unbelievably, all at once, repunched mint marks on the 1961 D are among the most famous and controversial in the Lincoln cent series. Some show clear separation. Others show distorted, tilted, or overlapping impressions. To the untrained eye, they look like damage. To a specialist, they look like a winning lottery ticket. But here's the twist: most people never look close enough. They drop these coins into jars. They spend them at gas stations. They pass them down unknowingly. And every year, fewer remain. And now pause for a second and ask yourself something dangerous. When was the last time you really examined a penny? Because the suspense doesn't stop with repunched mint marks. Some 1961 D cents show dramatic die doubling. Letters that appear thicker. Dates that seem to vibrate. The word liberty that looks like it's echoing itself. These aren't gimmicks. They're the fingerprints of a mint under pressure, and the market notices fingerprints. In high-grade condition, especially mint state coins with blazing original luster, values don't just climb, they leap. A pristine example with the right error, authenticated and slabbed, can sell for tens of thousands of dollars. Sometimes more, but the stories that stop collectors cold are the extreme outliers, the ones that make headlines, the ones that people argue about late into the night. Coins struck off-center. Coins with dramatic die clashes. Coins missing design elements entirely. And most astonishing of all, coins struck on the wrong metal. Yes, it happens. A 1961 D cent struck on a silver planchet. Or a foreign blank. Or a misfit alloy never meant for pennies at all. These are the freak accidents of minting history. One wrong blank slipping into the press. One instant. One survivor, and when those coins surface, auction rooms go silent, bidding wars ignite, prices explode. One reported top condition error example connected to the 1961 D lineage has reached an astonishing $844,000. Let that number sink in. For a penny, and then come the rumors. The what ifs. The speculative valuations whispered among elite collectors. Coins with multiple rare factors combined: pristine condition, dramatic error, unique composition. The kind of coin that appears once in a generation. That's where the million-dollar conversations start. Are they common? Absolutely not. Are they guaranteed? Never, but are they real? Enough to keep people searching every single day. This is where Act 2 tightens its grip, because here's the cruel irony: the most valuable 1961 D cents don't scream for attention. They hide. They blend in. They masquerade as ordinary coins. Their secrets only reveal themselves under patience, magnification, and knowledge, and time is not on their side. Copper cents are disappearing. Melted. Lost. Corroded. Forgotten. Every year that passes makes survivors scarcer. Every estate sale, every inherited jar, every old drawer is a potential crime scene of missed opportunity. Imagine opening a dusty tin. Hundreds of brown pennies. You almost close it. Then you hesitate. You pick one up. You tilt it under the light. And something feels off that moment? That's where lives change. Collectors dream of it. Dealers chase it. And some people actually live it. But here's the cliffhanger most people never consider: condition is king. A rare error in poor shape is interesting. A rare error in top condition is explosive. That's why grading matters. Why authentication matters. Why two coins that look similar can be separated by hundreds of thousands of dollars in value, and that's also why hesitation is expensive. How many people have already held a valuable 1961 D and let it go because they didn't know? How many spent it on coffee? How many tossed it into a Coinstar? No one keeps track of missed fortunes. Now Act 3 begins, and this is where everything comes together. The 1961 D Lincoln cent isn't just a coin. It's a symbol of something deeper. Proof that opportunity doesn't always announce itself. Proof that wealth can hide in plain sight. Proof that knowledge changes outcomes. You don't need to be born rich, you don't need insider connections, you need curiosity. And action, because right now, somewhere in America, someone is holding a 1961 D cent and has no idea what it could be. And somewhere else, someone is about to discover one and never forget that moment for the rest of their life. Which one will you be? Will you walk past history, or look closer, the next time you hear the clink of change? The next time you see Lincoln's profile staring back at you? Remember this story. Remember that Denver D. Remember that mistakes make legends, and remember that the most dangerous phrase in collecting isn't "I can't afford it." It's probably nothing. Because sometimes, it's everything.